In the shadowed corners of life's tapestry, some figures emerge, not with a clamor but with a quiet fury. Such is the case of the silent king, a solitary force as Laura, who harbored secrets not as burdens but as shields. Here was a woman who maneuvered through the labyrinth of family ties with the finesse of a strategist and the restraint of a sage. In the heart of betrayal's echo, Laura stood resolute. She was not the shattered soul whose pieces lay scattered for the world to see. No, she was a master in the art of silence, her apparent stillness veiling the tumult beneath. It was this very calm that masked the tempest stirred by the insidious words of Fernanda, her daughter-in-law. Hidden behind polite smiles and contrived warmth, Fernanda's barbed accusations at the retirement party did not pierce Laura's skin. They merely brushed against the steel of her resolve. The cold light of the ballroom reflected the nuanced dance of power and pettiness. Fernanda had long mistaken Laura's reticence for weakness, a folly steeped in her ignorance of the quiet strength that lay dormant. Laura, standing amidst the shallow echo of accolades and congratulations, did not flinch as Fernanda publicly belittled her financial standing, weaving narratives of jealousy and inadequacy. It was here that Fernanda unveiled not Laura's supposed shortcomings, but her own hubris. There exists a profound paradox in the realm of perception. A silent figure can flicker into a formidable presence. Fernanda, the manipulative feminine cloaked in confidence, overlooked this, mistaking the absence of words as an absence of power. Yet what slipped through her grasp was the undying truth. A silence such as Laura's speaks volumes, more than 1,000 empty boasts. The room was a theater, Laura, the director whose script remained unshared, her calculated plan unraveling in the shadows. For some betrayals, as profound as they are piercing, derive their power not from the outcry they provoke but from the quiet contemplation they inspire. In witnessing her supposed humiliation, guests unwittingly became spectators to an unfolding drama, one where silence forged strength and insult crafted resilience. Laura, in her taciturn grace, held the valuable possession of time. She knew that revenge does not ripen instantly, it matures, simmering in stillness until the moment of its perfect savor. It was this wisdom born of solitude and fortified by resolve that Fernanda had underestimated. In the grandeur of her retirement, amidst the flurry of false jibes, she remained patient, knowing every well-laid plan demands its due season. She thought her silence meant surrender. Fernanda would soon learn that in this silent humility hid a strategy. A revelation lingered on the brink of this gathering storm, a counter to the humiliation scripted by others. For Laura held a secret so weighty it could shift the balance of power with the utterance of a single sentence. One cannot predict the reverberations of truth. One can only prepare for them. She stood there poised not to respond with anger but with vindication. Under the chandelier's glow, where shadows curled in forgotten corners, a transformation poised to unfurl. Laura was not a victim in this dramatized tableau of familial politics. She was an architect planning a denouement that would redefine perceptions and shatter illusions. As Fernanda's laughter faded, drowned by her own echo, the silence grew not into resignation, but into revelation. Such is the emotional terrain of the betrayed, who may choose neither to forgive nor to forget, but to endure until the right moment to speak arrives. Yes, some kings do not roar. They wait, enduring the note of betrayal until it crescendos into a symphony composed by their hand. The night may conceal many truths, but it is never devoid of light. For Laura, patience was not merely a virtue but a craft learned through years of navigating the unseen tides. And when the door would finally open, when her secrets crept into the light, everyone, particularly Fernanda, would understand the potent silence of a king who waits to erase with precision. The chandelier above flickered slightly, casting dancing shadows across a room filled with expectant gazes. Laura's presence, always understated now, commanded the air with an electric intensity. One might have expected her to cower and retreat under the weight of public humiliation. A retirement celebration turned sour by Fernanda's barbed insults, meticulously aimed at the heart of Laura's dignity. Yet, amidst the murmurs of disbelief and suppressed laughter, Laura stood tall, weaving her legend with precision. In the awkward silence that followed the scandalous moment, Laura's voice emerged as a quiet storm. Her words, whispered rather than roared, carried the power to transform the narrative entirely. Within those few sentences, she defied the caricature painted by Fernanda of a hapless retiree with dwindling means. Instead, she unveiled a tapestry rich with strategic foresight and quietly accumulated power, rendering the room breathless as she calmly declared, "The funds that saved your parents from ruin came from me." The revelation rippled through the crowd like an electric shock. Heads turned, eyes widened, and Fernanda's gasp was an audible mark of disbelief and dread. Laura had been far more than an accountant battling financial woes. She was, in fact, the silent guardian of the family's wealth, her invisibility, her greatest strength. The shock of her revelation pinned Fernanda's arrogance to the wall, her assumptions unraveling as the financial stronghold Laura secretly commanded came to light. In this theater of the unexpected, the power balance shifted perceptibly, as Laura emerged not merely as a matriarch, but as a monarch wielding invisible straits of influence. Her maneuver might have seemed theatrical, yet it was born of pragmatism and a strategic mind honed by years of solitude and sacrifice. Laura's unassuming demeanor, long misconstrued as weakness, was but the foundation of her strength, all while Fernanda's self-assurance, seemingly fixed, began to crumble. Just as a storm can redraw the landscape, Laura's revelation redefined every relationship within the room, exposing the truth beneath the veneer of familial unity. The apparent disarray unfolded into a pattern that Laura had crafted with care. In a confessional recounting of her past, beckoning understanding without demanding sympathy, Laura sculpted a new image of herself. Her journey of endurance and self-denial laid bare the misconceptions others held of her, yet it was precisely these misconceptions that she had cultivated and used to her advantage. Laura was more than a banker of finances. She was a banker of secrets, knowledge hoarded behind a facade of simplicity that disarmed even the sharpest critique. Her narrative was not one of vengeance exacted in haste, but of power reclaimed through patience and forethought. Each action, each revealed truth, served as a prelude to the symphony. She was conducting a symphony some would call retribution, others, justice. And in this unfolding story painted with shades of gray, one could see her strategy not as the endgame, but the beginning of a new era. Fernanda's stunned silence spoke volumes as the crowd processed this new reality, where Laura had not been destitute but deliberate, where her life was not a cautionary tale of what not to become, but an example of the power within resilience and resourcefulness. It was a grand revelation that left Fernanda grasping for her composure, the unraveling of deception, a testament to Laura's silent strength. In that room, under the prying eyes and muted whispers, Laura drew not just a wall, but a bridge leading towards an enriched legacy more indomitable than the wealth itself. She was not merely balancing the scales in vengeance, she was asserting her rightful place, showing that beneath the humility lay an architect, a strategist, whose kindness was not weakness, but one of many tools in her arsenal. By a mother's filter of softly layered shadows and light, she taught not only Fernanda, but everyone present the deeper meaning of love backed by wisdom, a wisdom forged in the silent halls of sacrifice, where the art of letting go was as powerful as the resolve to hold on, and where real wealth came not from gold, but from truth revealed at the perfect moment. Little did everyone know behind the curtain of modest living that Laura chose so meticulously to maintain. There was an intricate tapestry of sacrifices and calculated decisions, each one representing a step on the stairway she had built to ensure Daniel's future. Her strategy for building wealth was a masterpiece, not born from opulence, but from keen foresight and an unwavering vision. It wasn't just about money, but what money could secure in terms of opportunities and stability for her beloved child. In the years following Daniel's birth, when the world seemed vast and unyielding, Laura crafted a life that turned the commonplace into opportunity. It was an environment where dedication and discipline reigned supreme, all aimed at fortifying his foundation with the strength of her dreams. Every dollar saved had a purpose, every investment a backdrop of hope, seasoned with a parent's sacrifice often too daunting to quantify. Even as the world assumed simplicity in her choices, each one was imbued with silent chronicles of endurance. The illusion of a struggling existence was not born out of necessity but designed as a brilliant stratagem, shielding her growing prosperity while instilling the principles of humility and diligence in her son. Wealth was in her eyes a double-edged sword. It could enable dreams but also corrode character if wielded recklessly. Laura, with a foresight sharpened by life itself, wielded it with precision and restraint. Her humble abode spoke not of destitution, but was a testament to the deliberate decisions made to create an environment where genuine relationships mattered more than material abundance. Laura's legacy for Daniel became one steered by virtues rather than luxuries, a rich narrative woven from countless hours spent budgeting, analyzing, investing, and understanding the intricacies of a world driven by financial prowess. The result was not just a well-off family secretly thriving in their means, but a son armed with values far greater than gold. Having gone without for so long, Laura knew the world's truths could be laid bare only when necessity demanded it. So she waited patiently, cultivating her secret garden of wealth, knowing that one day her efforts would bear fruit much larger than mere financial returns. This was not deception, but art, the art of crafting a reality where success was measured not by appearances, but by the genuine bonds and hard-won battles quietly fought. But with her carefully curated world exposed to unforeseen betrayal, Laura faced a crucible she had long prepared for. She understood that the real battle lay not in holding on to wealth, but unlocking the power it could wield, not only as a tool for teaching, but as a defense against those who underestimated her. The sacrificial acts she had performed, the silent struggles of a mother's heart torn between secrecy and honesty, now had to blend with a forced revelation. This was the tightrope she walked, balancing the protective instincts of a mother with the cunning strategy of a negotiator consummately prepared for any scheme unveiled before her. In revealing her financial reality, she challenged not just assumptions but the false securities those around her had leaned on. Laura's disclosures were the reinforcements behind a dam about to break, revealing not just the lie of her struggles, but the truth of her dual character and resourcefulness, forged in the fires of personal trials. As the layers of her hidden wealth unfolded, each one revealed a root far deeper than the shallowness of deceit. It exposed her intent to safeguard not just a future but a legacy where wisdom was the true inheritance, an asset no fortune could ever match. Daniel, though oblivious to the depth of her planning, was never a pawn in her story, but the focus of a life story built on perseverance and cunning. Laura's journey through these labyrinthine decisions was one not only of providing but of profound self-realization. She had long acted the part of an ordinary woman, and it was in these roles behind the misdirections and sacrifices that her resilience truly shone. Her modest living wasn't a mark of weakness. It was a testament to her nobility and extraordinary capacity to steer life's unpredictable journey with wisdom and dignity. Laura's life had been meticulously curated to ensure Daniel's success. From the shadows she orchestrated wins he would never attribute to anyone but himself. She covertly guided his endeavors, a silent partner in his professional ascent. The world saw his achievements, but only Laura knew about the invisible strings she pulled to make sure he stumbled towards triumph and, more importantly, lessons in humility and perseverance. Every investment in his education, every calculated risk in his business ventures had been hers alone to bear. She had been strategic, performing an intricate ballet of financial wizardry, all to propel him forward. Yet she shrouded this assistance beneath a veil of financial hardship, instilling in him a compulsion for grit. After all, what good is an inheritance to a child untested by adversity? Therein lay her genius, a wealth stashed away, hidden from the indulgence of easy success. The psychological complexity of her plans unfolded like a masterstroke. By appearing fragile and vulnerable, Laura created an environment where Daniel believed that every step forward was his alone. This facade of scarcity nurtured his work ethic, a subtle manipulation, ensuring he truly appreciated the fruits of his labor. Her intentions were noble, but the consequences of her secrecy were proving to be a double-edged sword. By masking her true capabilities, she inadvertently spawned a monster of entitlement within her son's relationships. Fernanda's disdain towards Laura's supposed insufficiency revealed a profound misunderstanding, more a monster of ignorance spawned by secrecy than intent. Fernanda saw only a facade of paucity, a mother unable to keep pace with their elite social circles. The wealth behind the curtain was something Fernanda could neither see nor grasp. In laying down her master plan, Laura had overlooked the human element, Fernanda's perception of power and status. The disdainful judgments of an affluent daughter-in-law, who knew nothing of Laura's silent sacrifices, created a rift between generations and misaligned values. And this stance, this superiority, overlooked the critical subtleties of Laura's intentions, erecting walls in lieu of bridges between her and Daniel's wife. The intricate web spun over the years led Laura to a confrontation with a startling reality. Daniel, reared in the shadow of unyielding success, was unknowingly being shielded from the brutal truths of adversity. His mother's intention, a cradle of tough love encased in secrecy, had become a bind, snaring him further from the virtues she set out to instill. As a result, Daniel's perception of his mother evolved into a distorted mirror reflecting only fragments of the truth. He looked down upon what he thought were her failures, failing to realize he was sculpted not in spite of them but because of them. The legacy she intended to pass down was wisdom, rooted in resilience, an inheritance beyond wealth now perceived as an unwanted specter haunting their family dynamics. In crafting her son's future, Laura herself journeyed through a tapestry of introspection. Each decision she faced painted a portrait of profound self-discovery, revealing strengths uncharted even by her. She glanced back at the tapestry she had woven, each thread a testament to her resilience, an enduring grandeur misconstrued as mediocrity by those unversed in the trials she navigated. This story at its core was about a mother's ambition, the desire to impart lessons forged in the crucible of personal trials. Yet what she inadvertently taught was a lesson in psychological diplomacy preparation, enacted with an orchestrating hand, tapping into the psyches of her kin, weaving them through the layers of unseen but felt power. However, Laura's carefully constructed empire inadvertently brewed unforeseen social dynamics within her family. Fernanda remained blind to the complexity of Laura's decisions, seeing only an elderly woman shaped by struggles, not strength. Daniel, too, needed to strip away layers of perception to truly grasp the magnitude of her foresight. As the shadows of the revelations lingered over them like an indomitable storm front, Laura was prepared. This carefully constructed narrative of humility, while an apparent vulnerability, was in fact a purveyor of strength, undeniable evidence of her silent mastery over life's chaos. Through every strategic intervention, Laura's story wasn't simply one of a woman managing financial streams. It was one of victory in the most heartfelt form of empowerment through adversity. Laura wasn't merely teaching Daniel to navigate the waters of professional life. She was preparing him to understand the depths of human character. The realization of her cognizance, her deeper wisdom, unfolded a narrative not of betrayal but of an elegant complexity, revealing itself as both a balm and a weapon in familial warfare. The house of cards she'd built on her crafted foundation now stood as a monolith of unspoken truths that would either bind them back together or tear them apart, only time would reveal. Fernanda's presence in Laura's life was never something anticipated or particularly welcomed. She entered with an air of confidence that bordered on arrogance, a product of the world she came from, a world worlds apart from that of Laura. In those early exchanges, Fernanda's demeanor was dismissive, barely glancing sideways at the life Laura had meticulously managed to craft under the relentless pressure of socioeconomic disparities. Fernanda was accustomed to extravagance and entitled to it by virtue of her upbringing. Her perception of Laura was clouded by unspoken judgment and unexamined privilege, forming a volatile mix that would brew tension within the family. In Fernanda's eyes, Laura was a mere relic of struggle and hardship, evidenced by a modest lifestyle that spoke volumes of sacrifices rather than successes. The gravity of this misunderstanding was not lost on Laura, who saw through Fernanda's veil of pretentiousness. Fernanda was blind to the profound resilience etched into Laura's life story, mistaking humility for mediocrity. The dangerous ignorance of complexities and the failure to discern wisdom encased in quiet strength would set the stage for a ceaseless tug-of-war between the two women. From the outside, Fernanda's family appeared polished, yet they too battled financial storms of their own making. Their empire, glimmering from afar, was built on fragile foundations that trembled in the shadow of their extravagance. When they approached Laura for financial support to avert the looming catastrophe of bankruptcy, the socioeconomic lines were momentarily blurred. Laura found herself making sacrifices yet again, this time in the form of a clandestine loan, millions passed discreetly to ensure her son's marriage remained untouched by adversity, at least for the time being. The enormity of Laura's gesture lay not just in monetary terms but in the intricate web of familial allegiances and vulnerabilities. Here was a woman acutely aware of her differences with Fernanda, choosing nonetheless to extend a hand to the ones who subtly belittled her for those very disparities. This decision marked not just a financial transaction but the creation of a complex cloak of deceit and entitlement that Fernanda wore proudly, unaware of the weight of her debt, a debt not just of money but of morality and gratitude. But for Laura, this financial maneuver was more than just a quiet testament to her capabilities. It was a line drawn in fine sand, a challenge issued in silent yet unwavering resolve. Fernanda's ignorance of Laura's silent sacrifices and unseen power was a catalyst for a seismic shift within the family dynamics, one that would slowly unravel loyalties and test the fabric of their relationships. As the layers peeled away, exposing truths wrapped in greed and misunderstanding, Laura remained a figure of stoic integrity, a pillar untouched by the turbulent tides her decisions often stirred. While Fernanda gleefully basked in the apparent newfound financial respite, Laura remained watching, ever vigilant, preparing for the inevitable unraveling of trust and truth. Her insights into human character, honed by years of navigating her world's harsh landscapes, informed her strategies crafted not in haste but in the careful anticipation of the tides turning. As day by day the gap between her self-perception and Fernanda's illusion of superiority widened, the stage was set for a confrontation not just of individuals but of ideologies. Fernanda's arrogance and Laura's humility walked a taut tightrope, with every interaction potentially leading them toward an elaborate unraveling of facades. As Laura continued to weave her tapestry of familial protection and strategic foresight, she was acutely aware of Fernanda's emerging attempts at manipulation. Fernanda's family, in their desperation and desire to reclaim their standing, schemed to question Laura's mental competence, hoping to discredit the support she extended and perhaps seize more than what was theirs, an audacious move, rooted in entitlement and deception. Yet what they underestimated was Laura's unyielding intuition, her ability to see through the veils of deceit that they hid behind. Every maneuver they made hardened Laura's resolve, forging in her a cold and calculated plan tempered by the very fire meant to consume it. In this game of shifting tides where loyalty met greed at the crossroads of consequences, Laura was a force of quiet devastation, a woman who wielded history's lessons like swords of unyielding truth. In the looming shadow of familial betrayal, one question seemed to penetrate the void. Could the tides of deception truly wash away the footprints of sacrifice and resilience Laura had etched with her life's work? Ultimately, the choices confronting Fernanda and her family were not just about money or power, but of legacy and respect, currencies far more enduring and formidable than the numbers they so feverishly chased. The realization dawned slowly, like the creeping gradation of dawn across a darkened sky. The betrayal was meticulously coordinated, and its roots lay deeper than surface squabbles or mild animosities. The very people she had aimed to protect had laid the bricks of deception with malicious precision. Fernanda's family had built a fragile scaffolding upon the presumption of Laura's trust, a structure teetering on the edge of collapse under the weight of their hubris. Yet Laura remained resolute, her determination crystallizing into a strategy as shrewd as it was inevitable. What Fernanda and her accomplices hadn't accounted for was Laura's hidden wealth of experience, her unassuming wisdom born from years of balancing precarious financial ventures and personal sacrifices. Her insights into the intricacies of the human psyche equipped her with an almost predictive capability, a sixth sense that had sensed the undercurrents of betrayal before the first wave had even struck. When whispers reached her about questionable inquiries into her mental capacity, doubts morphed into certainties. Fernanda's family, laden with desperation to salvage their crumbling facade, devised a scheme to incapacitate Laura, aiming to snatch back financial control by challenging her competency. This ploy was nothing less than a declaration of psychological warfare, a battle Laura was more than prepared to engage in. Ferocity fused with calculation as she planned her response with the meticulous detail of a seasoned strategist preparing to tip the scales back in her favor with the precision of a balancing act between legality and moral high ground. The betrayal seated by Fernanda's family forced Laura into an unwavering resolve, a determination to dismantle the web of lies and grasp the reins of her life's narrative. She knew that a confrontation loomed, a necessary showdown that would test familial allegiances and lay bare the true essence of each player's moral fiber. For Laura, this was not simply about retribution or revelation, but a reckoning where truth would shatter the illusory constructs of deceit. Every decision Laura had made up to this point, every carefully veiled act of support, each piece of advice tendered with loving restraint, came under scrutiny as she poised herself for the inevitable conversation. Daniel, her son, entrenched in the midst of these familial machinations, would need to face the stark truths of loyalty and trust. The painful journey towards unveiling betrayal would also be one of introspection for him, as Laura knew her revelations would force him to confront not merely Fernanda's machinations, but also his misconceptions about his own mother. Thus, Laura approached the cusp of revelation, with a blend of defiance and grace, her heart fortified by the truth she carried and the love that had fueled her sacrifices. It was more than just an exposé of deceit, it was a deeply human tragedy where greed clashed with the tenacity of familial bonds, raising the piercing question of whether kinship could withstand such foundational fissures. This narrative was not merely her defense, but a decisive action that would highlight the disparities between those driven by ego and those anchored by humility. Her methods, steeped in logical foresight, would lay bare the financial dependencies that Fernanda's family had deliberately kept opaque. She prepared documents meticulously, each page underscoring her structured support and their insidious ingratitude. In this, Laura wasn't solely seeking vindication, but clarity, a clarity that would define the future of her family's relational dynamics. As the plan of action unfolded in her mind, it cast shadows long enough to touch forgotten corners. She pondered the path ahead, one where truth once revealed would provoke fallout. This journey was not just about holding Fernanda and her family accountable, but about wresting back the dignity of relationships that had been marred by deceit. The struggle, therefore, was not merely a vendetta, but a silent revolution authored by a woman whose quiet strength shone brighter than any facade. The echoes of impending change lingered like a tremor in the air, charging the atmosphere with anticipation. From the ashes of betrayal, Laura knew she would rise, her story sculpted by resilience and resolve, an exemplar of the idea that hard truths once laid bare could breathe life into even the most fractured of trusts. Laura sat in the dimly lit study, the room suffused with the subtleties of a late evening turning into night. The weight of her discoveries lingered heavily on her thoughts, a burden both clarifying and galvanizing. The betrayal she unearthed was not a mere inadvertent slip, but a deliberate ploy schemed by Fernanda's family to undermine her in the most insidious of ways. The revelation that they intended to question her mental competency, to invalidate the loan, was a calculated attempt to skew power dynamics and seize control. For Laura, the betrayal dug deeper than any purely financial skirmish. It was a family invasion, an assault on her integrity, orchestrated by those she'd welcomed into her life. The audacity was staggering, yet it resonated with a perverse logic, the desperate act of a drowning family clinging violently to any perceived salvation. Their gambit was not just a theft of money, but an erasure of agency, a trial aimed to strip her of both power and dignity. As she paced the room, Laura's mind was a cauldron of thoughts, steely determination bubbling to the surface. Resolve tightened its grip on her heart, melding with the hurt to form a new harmony of purpose. She knew these machinations could not go unanswered. The time to shy away from conflict in the name of family unity was past. She was no longer swayed by the fragile facade of familial peace. The ground beneath her had shifted irreversibly, urging her toward a course of action she never imagined herself taking. Fernanda and her parents had underestimated her capacity for resilience. They saw a woman whose facade of simplicity masked layers of strategic forethought. Her empathy's quiet depth and willingness to extend grace even in adversity had marked her as weak in their eyes. However, Laura recognized in herself an untapped reservoir of strength that would illuminate the path forward. Her first course of action demanded incisive precision. Legal consultations became her lodestar, guiding her through the complicated maze of contractual justice, an area of subtle nuance and decisive action. Laura had never previously delved into such realms, yet her meticulous attentiveness now mirrored that of an expert. Her desire was not merely financial restitution, but a reclamation of her dignity and empowerment. Laura set about meticulously tracing each monetary thread that tied her to Fernanda's family, unraveling their entanglements to reveal a visible structure beneath deceit. She began cementing her narrative, collecting evidence not just to defend but to challenge. Her crisis had mobilized her into action, drawing out capabilities she had never sought to test. The act of retaliation, however, was never about malice. It was about illumination, about shining a light on shadows long cast in the periphery of her awareness. Her adversaries had crafted their assaults, underestimating her quiet strength, and that misjudgment would become their downfall. As tensions mounted, Laura knew that truth awaited its unveiling, not only for her benefit but for her family's legacy. Friends and allies stepped into roles of unwitting witnesses and eventual supporters. Their presence was a buoy of sanity amidst the chaotic sea of betrayal. Conversations once shared in passing camaraderie now took on the urgency of recovered trust. Some would emerge as true allies, standing firm amidst the unfolding saga, and others would reveal themselves as ephemeral, unable to withstand the gale of unveiled truths. Laura's plans coalesced into an undeniable momentum. Confidential letters sealed with the assurance of legalese slid across the hands of those who needed to witness them. Documents meticulously filed outlined the betrayal and its contours with searing clarity. While the family dynamics crumbled, her resolve strengthened. Beneath the veneer of gentility in her actions lay a blueprint for uncovering and reclaiming. Through this process, Laura became a mirror for those around her to reflect on their own truths. As she pushed through the cobwebbed confines of half-baked loyalties and broken promises, new dimensions of self and family emerged. The fractures made apparent by betrayal were possibilities rekindled by resilience and redress. Her story fostered a message of empowerment and example, an archetypal echo sounding in the lives it would touch. Amidst the darkness of familial deceit, Laura learned the most powerful truth of all: behind betrayal lies an opportunity for profound transformation. As she took control of her narrative, the ownership of her journey became her legacy, an inheritance crafted with clarity and conviction. Laura sat across the dimly lit room, her eyes penetrating the shadows that seemed to crowd the corners. The living room, once a sanctuary of familial banter and laughter, now lay burdened with the weight of unresolved truths. As she glanced at Daniel and Fernanda, she remembered how this had all begun, triggering a storm that shattered the illusion of their seemingly perfect lives. The air was thick with a silence so loud that it seemed to vibrate. Daniel's confusion was palpable, while Fernanda's defiance hung like a shield she wore against the world. Laura's voice, calm and steady, broke through the tension. She began to trace the timeline of betrayals, outlining her financial support with such clarity that it left no room for retort. She narrated how she had quietly orchestrated lifelines for Fernanda's family, a gesture meant to preserve her son's marriage, a gesture that had been weaponized against her. Fernanda's attempt to manipulate her kindness seemed almost laughable now. The audacity to doubt Laura's mental faculties in order to slither out from under legal obligations revealed more about their character than any confession ever could. Laura's revelation was not merely an inventory of her contributions, but a demand for acknowledgement of agency and integrity, a spotlight on the dynamics that had been stealthily undermining their bonds. Daniel's face was a tumultuous blend of disbelief and regret, the veil lifted from his eyes. He had been caught in the crossfire of loyalties, an unwitting accomplice in a scheme that sought to diminish the very foundation of his upbringing. His misconceptions about his mother's intentions were dismantled piece by piece as Laura spoke each word, dismantling the walls of misunderstanding he had built. For the first time, he began to view his mother not as a symbol of self-sacrifice, but as a formidable force, an individual with her agency and strength. Fernanda, on the other hand, wore her pride like armor, yet even her steely composure showed signs of crumbling. The exposure of her manipulation laid bare the fragile foundations of the life she had crafted. The very security she had sought to secure through deceit now teetered on the brink of collapse. Laura's account was not just a confrontation, but a challenge, an invitation for Fernanda to reflect, to reconsider the paths she had chosen, and perhaps to find a semblance of redemption in acknowledgement. The conversation was more than a familial reckoning. It was a crucible of change, an opportunity for Daniel to reassess the roles he had been assigned and those he had willingly, if unknowingly, embraced. Transformation often necessitated destruction, and in the charred remnants of their illusions lay the chance for redefinition. As they spoke, Laura's conviction fueled the discourse, driven by years of unspoken truths and silent endurance. Her strength lay not only in her financial acumen, but also in her unwavering commitment to unearthing reality. In this confrontation, she was not just a mother or an in-law, but a mirror reflecting the truth of who they all were at that moment. This cathartic exchange, no matter how painful, was necessary. The fragility exposed offered a canvas for change, a chance to fortify bonds based on authenticity rather than deceit. Amid the emotional upheaval, a question lingered: would they seize this moment to realign, to reconstruct their narratives with truth as the cornerstone? Laura understood that the journey toward reconciliation would not be easy. The shadows of betrayal cast long, yet she hoped to imbue them with the light of accountability. Her narrative now stood as a testament to the complexities of familial love, a transformative process she had engaged in, not just for herself but for the legacy she would leave behind. In that moment, as each word punctuated the silence, the realignment of their familial dynamics began. Daniel, for all his initial resistance, found within himself a willingness to confront these difficult truths. Fernanda faced a decision point, an opportunity to engage with this new reality and reconsider her role within it. Laura's journey had shown her that while betrayal can often leave lasting scars, the strength and clarity emerged from facing it head-on could carve paths to redemption. Her legacy was no longer a shadow of sacrifice and silence, but a narrative replete with empowerment, setting a precedent for strength forged through truth. As the conversation wound to a close, Laura knew that the road ahead was paved with challenges. Yet this confrontation was a crucial step toward healing, a chance for each of them to rewrite their story with integrity as its protagonist. Amidst the silence that followed the familial confrontation, Laura steered her focus onto the tangible steps toward reclaiming her autonomy and ensuring that the motivations of betrayal did not shackle her path to empowerment. The financial web she once spun as a supportive mother and protective matriarch now became her focal point for dismantling, not out of spite, but to assert a reality shaped by her decisions, free from the manipulation and deceit previously orchestrated by others. It was the dawn of decisive action, and Laura was resolute in her commitment to redefine the power dynamics that had long been skewed against her favor. In the solitude of her thoughts, Laura sketched the outlines of a plan that was both simple and transformative. She would begin by withdrawing the very financial infrastructure that Daniel and Fernanda had come to depend on, a structure she herself had quietly fortified through years of discreet sacrifices. This was not simply about pulling the rug from beneath their feet, but about initiating a cleanse of the toxic dependency that had fueled their entitlement and abuse. The first step was clear: the revocation of access to the financial accounts she had generously put at Daniel and Fernanda's disposal. The accounts, once a source of familial unity and perceived benevolence, became the battleground over which she would reassert her independence. With deliberate precision, Laura consulted with trusted legal advisors, ensuring her actions were as thorough as they were unassailable. Each signature, each sealed document represented a strategic dismantling of the avenues that had once bound her goodwill to those unwilling to respect its source. Navigating the labyrinth of financial entanglements she had created, Laura was meticulous, ensuring lines of communication were transparently maintained with financial institutions. Her actions were not driven by vengeance but were a restoration of her agency, a long overdue alignment of reality to reflect the truths she had long been acquainted with but chose for the sake of family to ignore. The impact was swift. Fernanda's lifestyle adjustments were most profoundly stark. The lavish expenses that had been funded under the guise of familial kindness were no longer sustainable, reducing the facade of affluence her in-laws once epitomized. As the financial tide swept back toward equilibrium, Fernanda found herself navigating unfamiliar territory, a land where accountability required adaptation and uncomfortably humility. The whispers of discontent that fluttered within her own family now crescendoed into palpable discord as their reliance on Laura's unseen hand was painfully exposed. For Daniel, the ramifications rippled through his professional life. transactions and ventures he had undertaken began to bear the weight of reality. The absence of his mother's financial safety net ushered a forced confrontation with self-sufficiency. The cushion of unearned security which he had so effortlessly relied upon now dissipated, demanding a fortitude he was yet to discover. Every executive decision was revisited with a sharpened sense of awareness, a newfound respect for foresight previously unencumbered by consequence. Laura's actions, while calculated, transcended mere financial withdrawal. They were an act of reclamation, a bold redefinition of familial roles. Through them, Laura demonstrated that the true wealth she possessed was not confined to monetary value but encompassed the courage to institute boundaries, the wisdom to discern empowerment from revenge, and the foresight to lay groundwork for her legacy unchained from the shackles of coercion. The unfolding upheaval was profound, fostering an environment ripe for reassessment. Within the quiet construct of her stillness, Laura acknowledged the personal journey these actions heralded. She was evolving into a beacon for integrity and autonomy, a journey that emphasized her place not just as a vessel of financial provision but as a formidable entity capable of shaping her own narrative. In the chaos her actions sowed, Laura saw opportunity. It was not merely about divesting what was once given but about nurturing space for growth and accountability. Her methodical approach symbolized the delicate balance between love and liberation, a pathway toward harmonious rebuilding rather than ruin. Laura's decisive actions reverberated beyond simple financial rearrangement. They stood as a testament to the transformative power of choice, a reiteration that empowerment derived from within, manifested not in cloaked sacrifice nor ignoble revenge, but in the unwavering commitment to truth and autonomy. Her story effectively set the stage for a family capable of evolving beyond its mistakes, hinting at potential reunification tempered by the enduring strength required to embrace change. As the repercussions of Laura's bold decisions began to ripple outward, the reality swiftly descended upon Fernanda's family and Daniel. These were not merely the predictable aftershocks of a financial realignment, but rather a profound awakening that disturbed their carefully constructed narrative of entitlement and dependence. Fernanda's family, once accustomed to a luscious lifestyle cushioned by borrowed wealth, suddenly found themselves standing at the precipice of financial ruin. The stark contrast from opulence to fiscal decay was jarring, a visceral reminder that their fortunes were intricately tied, not to their own doing but to the generosity of a woman they had scorned. Here, their opulent home became a haunting symbol of unsustainable excess, its grandeur now whispering tales of reckless ambition that failed to foresee the consequences of their actions. The intricate web Fernanda's family spun, envisaging a life untouched by the vicissitudes of financial realities, was unraveling strand by strand. For Daniel, the removal of Laura's financial support unveiled a landscape of professional challenges that he had never before faced without a safety net. The business, once comfortably nested within the shadow of Laura's pretend fiscal struggles, was now tasked with standing firm in the face of intense scrutiny and competition. Daniel's realization of this harsh new truth was akin to a cold awakening from a cherished dream. His mother's silent sacrificial prowess had always been his unacknowledged pillar, guiding his every professional endeavor and shaping his successes as his own. Now, with that pillar removed, Daniel had to navigate the tumultuous terrain of entrepreneurship unaided, forced to confront the myths of his self-sufficiency. In this new reality, the emotional dynamics within the family shifted palpably. Fernanda, for whom Laura had been more adversary than ally, began to taste the bitter fruits of reliance. Her sentiments evolved from disdain to a reluctant acknowledgement of the imbalance in their family dynamic. The starkness of their dependency on Laura's generosity crystallized into an understanding of the very fragility that dominated the core of their existence, a fragility masked by years of assumed independence but built on borrowed personas and finances. This evolving narrative was not lost on Laura, who observed the unfolding drama with a mixture of empathy and resolve. Her actions were not merely retaliatory or punitive, they were designed for growth, for intellectual and emotional accountability. She understood that true independence for Fernanda and Daniel could not simply be handed over like a gift. It had to be earned through self-discovery and genuine repentance. This delicate dance of consequence and reflection played out against a backdrop of varying emotional landscapes. For Daniel, there were moments of introspection, a peeling back of layers to reveal the man beyond the privileges bestowed by his mother's silent sacrifices. Here was a man forced to reconcile with his own perceived accomplishments and the stark reality of his own inadequacies in navigating a world without his mother's unspoken support. Fernanda, too, found herself engaging in unanticipated self-reflection, unpacking the layers of her own identity and confronting her missteps. Her mind wandered back to her earlier accusations and dismissals of Laura's integrity. She realized the gravity of her misconceptions and the depth of Laura's character, a character fortified not by false pretenses or ostentation, but by quiet strength and unyielding determination. She pondered the pathways forward, each one lined with challenges of rebuilding relationships and establishing trust anew. Amidst the instability and upheaval, though, was the possibility of transformation. The hard-learned lessons in resilience and humility laid the groundwork for a future that, if tread carefully and earnestly, could lead to the very reconciliation Laura hoped for. Her overarching intent was never to dismantle, but to reshape, propelling each member towards a path of genuine self-actualization. These emerging realities underscored a fundamental truth: the reliance on fabricated securities is but an illusion, and true fortitude must be cultivated from within. As Fernanda's family faced the specter of new beginnings devoid of borrowed opulence, the stage was set for an arduous journey towards redemption, clarity, and authentic independence. It would be a course marked by hurdles and contemplations, but also speckled with the glimmer of potential transformation. And in these uncertain times, amidst the echoes of a past, deeply intertwined with betrayal, yet rich with the promise of growth, lay an unwritten future waiting to unfold. In the swirling aftermath of financial collapse, the axis of Fernanda's world tilted radically, compelling her to reassess the intricate tapestry of her relationships. It was not just about the tangible losses, the assets, the superficial markers of status, but about the realization of how fragile these bonds had been tied largely to convenience and mutual advantage rather than genuine affection. Sitting amidst the ruins of perceived security, Fernanda found herself grappling with an unfamiliar concept: accountability. The opulent veil that once obscured her vulnerabilities had lifted, leaving bare the raw need for introspection and repair. Her path to reconciliation began where many might least expect, with a simple gesture. Fernanda reached out to Laura, the woman she had wronged, not just with dismissive words but through her tacit collusion in calculated betrayals. With humility coloring her approach, Fernanda's call for peace was both an admission of her failures and a plea for a fresh start. She realized that to rebuild trust, to patch the gaping wounds torn by deceit and arrogance, she would have to do more than just apologize. She needed to show that she was willing to change, to invest in the long, arduous work of rebuilding what had been lost. In parallel, Daniel's journey unfolded along a different curve. Stripped of the financial crutch that his mother had always provided, he was forced to reckon with his own shortcomings and reliance. The professional challenges were stark and unrelenting. Without Laura's discreet yet steadfast support, Daniel floundered amidst a sea of responsibilities he had previously taken for granted. Yet, with each setback, there was a burgeoning sense of self-awareness. He was waking up to the realization that his career successes had largely been scaffolded by an invisible hand, his mother's unwavering belief in his potential. He could either view these revelations as insurmountable mountains or as the bedrock upon which to rebuild his aspirations anew. This period of transition called for both Fernanda and Daniel to redefine their understanding of family and loyalty. They began to see the true value not in monetary legacy, but in the steadfast bonds of trust and respect. For Fernanda, this meant shattering her previous presumptions about value and examining the latticework of manipulation and pride that had shaped much of her adult life. She had to confront her fears and insecurities, not through deflection but through sacred conversations, admitting past errors and navigating the painstaking tasks of earning back the respect she had squandered. As Fernanda endeavored to mend broken bridges, Daniel faced the pulsating demand of self-reliance, transforming what was initially seen as a burden into an educational odyssey. He found himself slowly shifting from a mindset shackled to entitlement towards one that cherished grit and tenacity. The process was anything but linear. Each stumble offered another lesson in perseverance, each minor triumph a testament to the potential for growth beyond the confines of his prior self-imposed limitations. Thus emerged an evolving tableau where Fernanda and Daniel no longer stood as isolated figures, but as intertwined beings yearning for reconnection. They began to appreciate that the fabric of family, when torn, must be repaired, not with the efficiency of a quick fix, but with the deliberate care often reserved for priceless relics. This was not just about them. It touched on the broader complexities of legacy identity and the intricate dance between independence and interdependence. Laura, watching from a measured distance, recognized these changes with a guarded optimism. Her heart, full of the cautious hope only a parent knows, began to soften towards the possibility of forgiveness not as a gift, but as a deserved outcome of sustained efforts. She witnessed in Fernanda and Daniel the seed of transformation taking root, acknowledging that true atonement and reconciliation would require more than tears or promises. They were on the cusp of a reinvention that demanded not just words, but consistent, tangible action. The journey of repair and renewal, though fraught with emotional landmines and heavily freighted discussions, bore the burgeoning promise of a profound transformation. The tale was no longer solely about financial ruin or familial betrayal. Instead, it was evolving into a narrative of redemption, one marked by the courage to change and the resilience required to turn adversities into stepping stones for progress. Situated within this evolving space was the latent potential for a newfound integrity, a cohesive unity that prioritized truth and unwavering fidelity over the shimmering yet ephemeral lure of past deceptions. This modern odyssey was forging a path from fragmented ties to a vision of family bolstered by authenticity and the enduring power of genuine love. Fernanda's recent visit left Laura contemplating the intricate dance of recompense and reconciliation. An unexpected reunion, the kind that one finds hard to fathom without witnessing firsthand, was now etched in Laura's memory. With the delicate pulse of life in the form of a newborn grandchild, the visit was charged with an emotional intensity that threatened to break through the stronghold of Laura's resolve. Yet she remained poised, the steadfast architect of her newfound reality, built on a foundation of purpose and integrity. There was an unspoken vow in the air, a promise that this was not merely a meeting of individuals, but of generations, potentially redefining what had been lost, broken, and altogether forgotten in the tumult of familial discord. The symbolism of the newborn was not lost on Laura. It was as if the universe, in its peculiar wisdom, had delivered this child as a symbol of hope and a catalyst for change. Fernanda's apologies, though steeped in remorse, were delivered with an authenticity that Laura had not expected. Each word carried the weight of past mistakes but also hinted at the desire for redemption, an opportunity to draw closer without the shadows of past deceit looming over them. Yet Laura knew that apologies alone wouldn't suffice. True reconciliation demanded more than whispered promises made in vulnerable moments. It required actionable intent and consistent effort to rebuild fractured trust. Laura's eyes, however, had witnessed much in life, rendering them skeptical sophistications of cold reality wrapped in motherly warmth. Wisdom dictated that any path forward must be clearly defined by boundaries, an understanding that love and trust cannot thrive blindly amidst a garden of ill intent. As the conversation unfolded, Laura found herself outlining the terms that would guide this fragile rebuilding phase. Transparency and mutual respect had to lead the way, serving as the pillars of a new legacy that triumphed over betrayal and suspicion. Through this ritual of restitution, Fernanda and Daniel confronted difficult truths about themselves. Their journey, no longer insulated by deception and denial, demanded accountability and relentless introspection. The closure they sought leaned heavily on Laura's willingness to forgive, a formidable cornerstone they hadn't fully appreciated yet understood was crucial for their own salvation. They knew now that regaining Laura's trust would be laborious, akin to navigating a labyrinth where each twist and turn required an earnest heart and a committed mind. Simultaneously, Laura found strength in vulnerability, recognizing that familial bonds once severed could indeed be restored. Her heart, fortified by lessons of endurance, allowed a small window of optimism to seep through her defenses, illuminating potential futures previously overshadowed by conflict. In accepting the possibility of change, she was embracing a far more profound journey, not just of personal triumph, but an embrace of family in its truest, most flawed form. This synthesis of past grievances and future hopes was as much a testament to the resilience of the human spirit as it was a signal of closure and new beginnings. With every passing day, Laura wove empathy into the fabric of her interactions, crafting a tapestry where hard truths coexisted with loving intent. Her life's narrative was shifting, transforming from one of mere survival to one of calculated growth, a forwarding momentum that hinged on forgiveness without forgetting a reconciliation, not of convenience but of necessity and choice. With this transformation, she recognized that while trust was fragile, it was also durable, capable of sustaining new trials that life would inevitably present. She understood that both love and struggle defined who they were and who they would become as a family. Laura's transformational odyssey mirrored life itself, unpredictable, complex, and full of unexpected junctures that test the essence of relationships. The road was long but promising an open invitation to craft legacy anew, sculpting familial solidarity from the shards of misunderstanding and distrust. The ordeal had taught her not only how to reclaim herself, but to redefine what family truly meant, a trusting embrace in times of ease and strain, without judgment and with abundant grace. And so with every step, Laura charted a course through the turbulent waters of renewal and hope. This narrative of empowerment was in its own right a profound revelation, a story of growth and reinvention that resonated deeply against the echoes of her past. As the path unfolded, she resolved to carry forward only what was gentle, honest, and essential. For in doing so, she could offer her family a future brightened by love's resilience, crafted not by perfect people but by enduring hearts willing to forgive, heal, and thrive together. As Laura opened the door to find Fernanda standing there, cradling a newborn, the air between them crackled with a tension that was stark, yet laced with potential. This unexpected visit was more than a mere chance to introduce a new descendant. It was a cautiously extended olive branch, a fragile initial step toward weaving mended threads in their tangled family tapestry. The newborn granddaughter in her innocent vulnerability symbolized latent potentials, a living testament of hope, carrying in her tiny fists the possibilities of healed relationships and unburdened futures. Fernanda stood there, initially hesitant, her confidence visibly worn around the edges by the upheaval of recent months. This wasn't the same woman who had belittled Laura in that fateful party encapsulated by arrogance and privilege. Circumstances had shifted tectonically beneath her feet, and now, in the glow of new motherhood, alighting her features, there was a hint of humility, a rare acknowledgement of missteps, and a willingness to embark on unfamiliar corrective terrain. For Laura, this moment demanded the delicate balancing act of maintaining her hard-won autonomy and embracing the role of a matriarch, a pivotal voice in the legacy they were constructing despite its shaky foundation. The emotional charge of the interaction was undeniable, loaded with unspoken apologies and a shared history that needed untangling. Yet beneath this interplay was a newly set boundary, the equilibrium Laura had vowed never again to compromise. The child cooed softly, an innocent disruption in the charged silence. Laura's gaze aimed not merely at Fernanda, but through her seeing not just the mother, but a potential ally in healing a fractured family. Fernanda's vulnerability was palpable as she gently offered the baby to Laura, an act of trust that carried a profound message. Holding her granddaughter, Laura felt a rush of emotions tethered to hope and the unmistakable gravity of starting anew. This moment was poised on the precipice of change, where words often failed to articulate the complexities of familial wounds and reconciliations. The path to forgiveness was a labyrinth of earnest efforts, each setback poised to redirect the course, yet offering opportunities for deeper connection. It demanded introspection and a commitment to genuine transformation, a truth recognizable to both women standing at life's pivotal crossroads. Healing, as Laura knew too well, was not the pursuit of forgetting. It was the embrace of what was necessary for future wholeness, learning from scars without allowing them to define one's identity. This delicate dance of acknowledgement and new understanding served not just as a foundation for potential reconciliation, but as a lesson in enduring empathy and strength. Life's unpredictable currents had set its course through their shared history, and now navigating their shared future depended on how they harnessed its flow. This reunion symbolized rebirth not just biologically through the child's existence but spiritually, a shift from discord toward harmony. Their shared mistakes were not mere bygones but stepping stones toward an enlightened tomorrow if wielded responsibly as guides rather than hindrances. The scarred but resilient terrain of their past had given way to fertile ground for growth of character, of relationships, of the legacy they were crafting for Laura's granddaughter to inherit. The mutual understanding established in the silence, now bridged through this infant's presence, underscored the essence of familial bonds, imperfect yet undeniably potent in their resilience and renewal. Here they stood at an unprecedented moment where the future could genuinely unfold from their collaborative desire to reconstruct their familial narrative, benefiting not just themselves, but all those who would walk paths they now sought to repair. The narrative wasn't merely about forgiveness. It was about reimagining what they would inherit and leave behind, a legacy not built on redirected blame or quiet subjugation, but on a reinvigorated promise to engage with honesty and affection as cornerstones of family. Laura realized that accepting this new journey demanded more than resolve it, invited them to rediscover connections once thought severed, and redefine them amidst the complexities of their shared future. With Fernanda and the child now in embracing proximity, Laura knew that true empowerment came not just from independence but from acknowledging and weaving together the threads of vulnerability and strength, where the past informed the present, yet did not dictate it. The reconstruction of their family would stand or fall on this delicate balance which Laura held preciously within her, a steward of both past and future, shaping the narratives yet to unfold. A renewal is not a simple endeavor, yet Laura finds herself at this juncture, where trust must be painstakingly rebuilt on the fractured terrain of past betrayals. She understands that to move forward, both Daniel and Fernanda must embrace a path of transparency and unvarnished honesty that serves as the mortar for familial reconstruction. In Laura's eyes, this means stripping away pretenses and addressing past wrongs without the veil of excuses. Laura systematically outlines to Daniel and Fernanda that reconciliation requires them to not just utter apologies, but to embed change into daily actions. Their history is steeped in unaddressed grievances and manipulation, but Laura sees potential in addressing these discomforts head-on. As the matriarch, she sets boundaries that demand respect instead of resentful compliance. A bridge cannot form without mutual acknowledgement of shortcomings, nor without a consistent effort from Daniel and Fernanda to forego their previous entitlement. The conditions for reconciling are rigorous, designed not to punish but to purify. Transparency will become their shared language, a prerequisite before any progress can be celebrated. Laura stands firm, her resolve born from the lessons life has taught her. Emotional fortresses crumble when they are hollow from deceit. In this new order, secrets serve only to undermine the painstakingly laid foundation of honesty. Her ultimatum is clear: sincerity must precede forgiveness. Yet Laura harbors no naive optimism. She knows that this road is daunting, forcing each party to confront uncomfortable truths. For Daniel, this means acknowledging his complicity in his own blind reliance and denial. His mother no longer shields him from his choices. He must now see the consequences unfiltered. And for Fernanda, it's about owning her role in exploiting Laura's generosity, a bitter pill to swallow, but a crucial one if their dynamic is to transform. Gone are the days where apologies serve as temporary band-aids over deep-seated rifts. Laura insists on a practical framework, monthly family meetings dedicated to open dialogue and problem-solving. These aren't empty gestures. They are commitments to unity, where airing grievances is not just accepted, but required. Compassion is extended, but it is conditional upon active participation from all sides. The three of them must invest in these sessions earnestly, with an unwavering pledge to cultivate an environment where honesty thrives. In navigating this landscape, Laura emphasizes the need for emotional literacy, urging Daniel and Fernanda to learn the art of expressing and managing their feelings without resorting to manipulation or deflective tactics. This involves educating themselves and perhaps even involving a mediator to guide these initial unsure steps towards effective communication. Laura's terms are steeped in accountability but offer a promising horizon. If adhered to sincerely, they promise not only familial restoration but also personal growth for Daniel and Fernanda. Their journey to repentance is not a sprint, but a marathon demanding stamina and genuine commitment, with every milestone achieved a testament to their dedication to this cause. A complex interplay of emotions and intentions propels the narrative forward, yet Laura's position remains unwavering. Betrayal can only be mended through consistent respect and shared responsibility for past harms. She has no interest in dwelling on past grievances unnecessarily, but rather in ensuring they are never repeated. Her conditions, though stringent, are imbued with a hope that seeks to birth something transformative from the ashes their relationship had been reduced to. In this pressing narrative of reconciliation, a new chapter unfolds whereby the rebuild is a collective mission, inclusive yet demanding of each individual's endurance and integrity. The path is fraught with potential setbacks, but Laura's transformative vision holds them together, a vision where familial bonds are regenerated through mutual effort and grace. In this arduous road to healing, Laura resists the seduction of bitterness, choosing instead to invest in a future marked by genuine change and an ethos of mutual respect. As they embark on this conditional rebuilding process, they will need to relinquish past grievances, equipped with a new understanding and readiness to learn from an erstwhile turbulent history. Such is the nature of family, a persistent intertwining of pain and redemption, constantly seeking balance through love and reconciliation. In the quiet aftermath of a tempest, the echoes of conflict linger long after the storm has passed. The scene is now set against a backdrop of stillness where once there was only turmoil. It's here that the final act unfolds, not with the violent crescendo of past betrayals, but with the subtle shifts that herald a dawn of understanding and transformation. Laura stands not alone, but surrounded by the silent witnesses of her journey, a life reconstructed through trials by fire and tempered by the steel of resolute will. Yet she finds solace in the stillness, as she lets her final decision rest gently in the hands of time. Around her, the remnants of a life once fractured by deceit begin to form new patterns. Where there was the harsh clatter of confrontation, there now exists a serene quietude. Fernanda, once the architect of strife, faces the realization of her own making, standing amidst echoes that speak only of choices made and their unyielding consequences. The room she inhabits, though filled with people, feels as vast and empty as an endless chasm. The symbols of their past lay scattered, forgotten objects and silent memories that tell a story of rivalry, loss, and eventual introspection. Fernanda finds herself grasping at threads of what used to be yearning for a changed narrative that has eluded her until now. Then there's Daniel, who has come to embrace the lessons his mother's silent strength imparted. Through adversity, he learned that power lies not in words, but in the quiet determination to rise amid defeat. For Laura, her transformed existence is not just survival, but a testament to the quiet victory of self-realization. The weight that once burdened her shoulders has melted away, leaving her lighter, unshackled by the bonds of past grievances. Silence is her kingdom, where the echoes of pain have been replaced by a newfound serenity. And you stand amid these lives, perhaps intrigued by their tumult, and now reflective of your own path. Imagine yourself as the arbiter of fate, silent yet omniscient. Would you grasp the courage to persist through turmoil, to let silence guide your hand? Would you trust in the passage of time to heal crevices carved by past betrayals? Consider what you would become once the accusations fall away into yesterday's shadows, leaving only quietude, unforgiving yet forgiving in its own right. As the sun sets on this journey, a profound resonance remains. Not every resolution is loud, nor is every ending filled with definitive closure. Sometimes it is in the emptiness where one discovers fullness. Sometimes light reveals not the object, but the shadows it casts. And what is left is the sanctity of an ending that needs no declaration, only silent acknowledgement. In this sacred silence, Laura's transformation is mirrored by the quiet acceptance of those who remain tethered to her life by bonds stronger than steel. She stands softly illuminated, her silhouette etched against the pale canvas of a new beginning. The ring now abandoned lies quietly against the floor, a relic resigned to history, an unwritten chronicle of everything said and unsaid. A simple breath fills the air, carrying with it the essence of forgiveness, a door unlocked, a promise unfulfilled, yet eternally hopeful. Somewhere in this tapestry of silence and light lies a truth unspoken, an invitation to witness, not to judge, but to understand. There is no need to proclaim a victory or lament a loss, for within silence resides the final word spoken to the soul. And you, whispered by the cadence of this silence, may find yourself lingering at the threshold. Would you step through, allowing the journey's quiet conclusion to leave its indelible mark? In the end, it is not in the redundant echoes, but in the abandoned silence where grace ultimately resides. Here, among whispering shadows and timeless light, everything finds its place, unchanging, sacred, silent.